The news, sponsored in part by Leading Edge World Trade, networking the world. Now, with a profile of the guest, John McLaughlin.
Which is he, white knight or hostile raider? Let's put the question to him. Born Holdenville, Oklahoma, 58 years of age. Wife Beatrice, 14 years, 4 children from a previous marriage. Presbyterian, Republican. Texas A&M basketball scholarship. Oklahoma State BS, geology. Phillips Petroleum, geologist, 4 years. Petroleum Exploration Company, founder, 10 years. Mesa Petroleum Company, chairman and CEO, 22 years and currently. City Service, General American, Gulf, Phillips, and Unical companies. Attempted takeovers, earning shareholders of all 5 $13 billion in profits. United Shareholders Association, founder, 86. T. Boone Pickens. It's one-on-one.
A year ago, Mr. Pickens, you told a Barron's magazine reporter that you were out of the hostile takeover scene. And this week, you launched a $2 billion takeover against Diamond Shamrock. Why did you change your mind?
Didn't change our mind. It's a friendly acquisition, hopefully.
How are you going to keep it friendly?
Well, we've made a solid, strong offer for Diamond Shamrock. And we haven't heard from the Diamond Shamrock management yet. And it's, I'm hopeful that some dialogue will open up here where we can sit down and talk.
Mary Rose Okar is the United States Congresswoman, and she takes the position that you and people like you are holding corporate America hostage. Raiders are doing that. And by reason of that, the rich, namely you, are getting richer. And you're not really helping corporations out at all, or nor the shareholders. What do you say to Mary Rose Okar?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet, but I hope sometime we have an opportunity to sit down and talk and let me tell my side of the story. But where she identifies me as a raider, I don't believe that people that go in and put $1 billion into a corporation, become a large stockholder, should be identified as a raider. If you look back over my record, I've always stuck to the oil and gas industry. I've never made an offer for a company outside the oil and gas industry. And we've always been the largest stockholder in every company that we've made an offer for. So it's, I see that we're there for constructive purposes and not destructive purposes. And when you look at Mesa Petroleum, which is the largest independent oil company in the United States today, that was done over a period of 1964 to 1986.
You're heading into a rough year, it would appear, in the United States Congress, the 100th session, which begins in January. Peter Rodino, for example, is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and he takes the position that instead of helping corporations improve, corporation management becomes so obsessed with people like you, and they're constantly looking over their shoulders, that they focus exclusively on the short term, this quarter's profits, not on long term, not on constructive goals down the road, not on research and development, that you inspire them with such dread that all they can focus on is the tyranny of the present moment. What do you say about that?
Well, your question is almost like you're a member of the Business Roundtable, because that's what they say.
The business, you mean that prestigious group? They are opposed to people like you, too?
Oh, sure. You know they are.
What do you say to that?
Well, the first thing, let's identify who's a short-term player. And I have to look at the executives in the major corporations in America as the shortest of short-term players. That is, that they compensate themselves on an annual basis. 1, a large salary, 2, a large bonus. They have very little ownership in the corporation. What I would like to see is these executives have a larger ownership and greater risk as far as the success or failure of the corporation, just as stockholders have. And see, I come from the position that stockholders own companies and managements are employees, which is, you know, that got out of step for a while, but it's coming back into vogue now pretty fast.
You're maintaining, therefore, that your takeover efforts have, for example, in the instances of your attempts to take over Unical, Phillips, General American, Gulf, City Service, that these attempts have refashioned the management so that it becomes more responsive to the shareholders, more attentive to the duties of management, and generally they develop a brisker attitude towards management that helps the corporation. Is that the contention?
That's my contention is that you need this. You need to establish that stockholders own companies and managements are employees. With that, you bring back an accountability to corporate America that's been missing. That's the reason why we're not competitive in world trade. That's the reason why we've lost market share, is because managements of corporations have done a poor job competing with the opposition. I believe that that can be brought back into the system by bringing accountability back to the owners.
As I indicated to you earlier, members and prestigious members of the United States House and Senate don't agree with you. One of those members is Howard Metzenbaum. Howard Metzenbaum says this about you. Sometimes the raiders don't even bother to acquire their targeted companies. All of those 5 that I listed before, from Unical right down through the city service, you did not acquire. He continues, instead, in what is now commonly called green mail, you announce a planned takeover, you buy up some stock, you watch the stock prices rise, and then sell off the stock at inflated prices to the company which is trying to avoid the takeover. What do you say about this green mail charge against you?
Give me an example where I took green mail.
Well, I presume Metzenbaum could do that. Are you saying you took no green mail?
No, I've never taken green mail. In fact, we've stuck with the 750,000 stockholders that made $13 billion off of those 5 companies that you just mentioned, and our part of it was less than 5% of the profit. So, no, we've never taken green mail. We've always stuck with the stockholders. Now, Senator Metzenbaum, I appeared before the, I believe it was Senate Judiciary Committee in 1984. And he was very complimentary of me as an entrepreneur. But he said, Mr. Pickens, you make money just too fast. And I said, well, if I did the things I do and broke even, would you like it better? And he said that he would. The reason why you can make money out of these situations is because managements have done a poor job. And in a public marketplace, the price of the stock is selling substantially below the appraised value of the assets. That's the only reason.
Because of poor management?
Sure.
Well, let me take you through, if I may, something that happened in November, and that was the effort to take over Goodyear by Sir James Goldsmith,
yeah.
Okay? Now, do you think that Goodyear was a poorly managed company before Goldsmith came along?
There's no doubt that Goodyear had problems. I mean, I can give you a very good example of that was their entry into the oil and gas business. It was a mistake.
Have you ever heard of a responsible industrial analyst by the name of Donald DeSenza?
No, I don't know.
Well, Donald DeSenza is as described, and he says flat out that Goodyear was an excellently managed business. It was performing extremely well before the takeover office, well, I don't want to use that term in front of you, the takeover specialist, Sir James Goldsmith, came along. So that you cannot justify this takeover attempt in terms of improving the management of the company. Well, what do you say to that?
Well, there's no doubt that I mean, you can go back and analyze the diversifications that Goodyear did, which are poor. I mean, they have not been successful on diversifications. I think, as Goldsmith did, that Goodyear should stick to their business. They should stick to their core business and be the best in the business as far as tire manufacturers are concerned. What happened to Goodyear was they had more cash than they had investment opportunities. So they diversified, and when they did, they made mistakes.
Do you not, well, it isn't just DeSenza, by the way. There's a fellow by the name of Millis who is in a specialty firm that analyzes rubber companies called the McLaughlin Company. He takes the position that it was a well-managed company.
Well, he's talking about the rubber end of the business. I'm not arguing that. I think Goodyear has a great tire manufacturing rubber business. I'm talking about when they got into Celeron, when they built the All-American pipeline from the West Coast to the
Those
Gulf
were
Coast.
ill-advised diversifications.
Exactly.
So therefore they were vulnerable, and therefore Goldsmith's point is correct. But the only problem is that instead of strengthening Goodyear now, would you not succeed that the $93 million that they had to raise, $930 million, wasn't it? $930 million, no, it was $93 million that they had to raise to buy off Goldsmith has weakened Goodyear.
Oh, no, $93 million is a drop in the bucket. I think what you have to go back to is the stock they bought from Goldsmith, which is over $600 million. $93 million of it was profit. And then they also bought back from the stockholders at $50 a share another part of the company. So they have taken on debt to buy that back. That doesn't bother me.
All right, let me, just to sum up this segment, and we'll be back in a minute, but to sum up this segment, I guess you really are a white knight. Is that what you're telling us? You're not a hostile raider. You're a white knight in the sense that you have a white hat on.
I do think...
You're a source of beneficence.
Well, the last thing we did was a white knight deal in June of 1986 when we acquired Pioneer Corporation, that we were called in to make an offer for that company. We were not hostile. They invited us in. And
this is what you're doing with Diamond Shamrock?
Diamond Shamrock's a little different.
We'll be right back.
makes it.
Mr. Boone Pickens, Ivan Boesky is an arbitrageur. What's an arbitrageur?
Well, an ARB they've gotten plenty of publicity lately, haven't they?
Indeed they have.
An ARB is not an integral part of a takeover.
They follow in the wake of a takeover.
Exactly.
What do?
They will come in and after an offer is made and the price moves up. Let me just kind of go through an example here with numbers. But let's say a company's trading at 20 and an offer's made for the company at 30. The price of the stock will move up someplace between 25 and 30 until, you know, and it comes closer to the time the deal closes out.
Right.
Okay, well, the ARB comes into the play after the deal is announced and will pick up the stock that's available from both large and small stockholders that do not want to take the risk to go to 30.
Now, that's all public forum knowledge.
That's right. That's
now,
what's called a risk arbitrage.
What did Boesky do?
Well,
what's alleged?
What is alleged is that Boesky had information before the offer was made.
Where did he get the information?
In one instance that I've read about, he got it from Dennis Levine at Drexel Burnham.
Who's already been indicted?
Yes, that's right.
What's wrong with inside information?
What is wrong with it?
Yeah.
Well, it's wrong from the standpoint that all stockholders don't have the same information available to them. Insider information, we found, you know, in '84, we had an inside information legislation, if you recall. And I think that from '84 to 1986, inside information is very, very difficult to identify.
Well, it's difficult to identify?
Yeah, it's difficult to identify what is inside information.
Suppose somebody calls you up and say, Boone, I got a tip for you. What do? Analyze the tip in terms of whether or not it's inside information or not?
Well,
before you act on it?
Well, the first thing is that I don't play tips. And if I ever have a broker that gives me a tip, I'll tell a broker straight away.
All right, well, suppose somebody calls me up and says, hey, John, I got a tip for you.
Well, let me tell you what I tell a broker. I hire you to execute my orders, either buy or sell, but I don't need any help on investment advice.
Well, you know, when do you cross the line of insider trading?
Well, insider trading would be if you knew an offer was going to be made, and you called me up and said this offer for this company is $20 a share. Offer's going to be made for $30 a share.
Is it clear in your mind what insider trading is? What constitutes the inside element of the knowledge? Where the line is?
I'm not sure I do know where the line is.
Well, isn't that a problem? Maybe
it's not a problem for me.
There's a professor at Simon Mason University by the name of Henry Manny, and he says it's not the insider trading, nor is it the greed that ought to be approached, if that's the right word, the capitalistic impulse involved in it, howsoever intense it may be. It's the whole framework of regulation that has to be redefined. Do you agree with that? He wants to get rid of the Williams Act.
Well, you've got me in a tough spot here on whether you get rid of the Williams Act or not. I come from the direction of stockholders' ownership, and I believe a lot of stockholders are not informed to the level that maybe some of the others are informed. And so I want all the protection I can for those stockholders. So I don't like to see things taken away that I believe are protective of those 47 million people in America today that own stock in public-owned companies.
Well, I think that speaks very highly of your character, Mr. Pickens, and I commend you for that. Now, let me ask you this about Ivan Boesky. Is he a friend of yours?
Ivan is a friend of mine.
Do you think that he got too slight a penalty? Was it minimal from the SEC? $50 to pay back and 50 million in penalties?
Well, see, I don't know what Ivan has done for sure. I've read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post.
You think it's a bum rap?
Oh, I'm not saying that at all. I think that without a doubt, Ivan has broken the rules. And I don't think a person has to cheat to win. And Ivan is a person that definitely did not have to cheat to win, because Ivan, one, is a very smart guy.
And also he's a very, very wealthy man.
Yes.
So he's way ahead. Why did he do it?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you think the SEC should have a stronger watchdogging role than it has? I mean, the future SEC?
No, see, I think the SEC is doing a good job. I think the enforcement division of the SEC, if there's anything you could criticize the enforcement divisions for, it's because their budget has not been large enough to pursue some things that it would have probably been good if they did pursue. So it's, no, I think the SEC is the one I mean, they caught Ivan Boesky. They're the ones that caught
and you
Dennis
commend them
Levine.
for it.
Yes,
and
I
you
sure do.
and you want to see that watchdogging continue.
Absolutely.
And become intensified?
Yes.
Well, let me ask you this. Levine was a fish. Boesky was a shark. Who's the whale that they're going to catch?
I don't know. I don't know
Drexel
that.
Burnham?
Well, you see, I don't understand. No, I don't think Drexel Burnham is involved in insider trading.
Drexel Burnham says if you took 99.9% of our employees and they all came out perfectly clean, you'd still have 10 employees that were a problem. Can you understand that reasoning?
Sure.
I mean, you're going to find some bad apples no matter where you go.
Well, that's possible. Of course, I'm not going to take that same reasoning and put it over to Mesa's group, because I don't.
You're 100% clean.
Exactly.
We'll be right back. Mr. Pickens, do you think that the congressional hearings that will doubtless be held next year, either in the House or the Senate, is going to yield any modifications in law affecting takeovers?
I don't think so, but let me comment just a second about that. Forever, as far as I can remember, I'm 58 years old, that the Republican Party has carried big business. They have always been connected, and here I find it very interesting.
Ironic
that the Democrats, Metzenbaum, Proxmire, Dingell, Rodino, are talking about legislation, and if you look at that legislation, all of it entrenches entrenched management. I mean, you're talking about tenure in some of these executives.
You're saying that they're on the side of entrenched management.
The kind of things they're coming up with, yes, it will entrench management.
Okay. Paul Volcker's on your side. He likes takeovers, right?
I don't remember what Chairman Volcker's position.
Chairman Volcker's on your side. Also, the Undersecretary of the Department of the Treasury. He's really been speechifying on the subject. You're a folk hero, according to him. His name is Richard Darman. He's been talking about the corpocracy and how takeovers can relieve that rigidity that sets in. Well, you take General Motors, for example. What do you think, by the way, about what happened to H. Ross Perot, who, as you know, that his company was acquired, EDS, by General Motors, and just this past week they bought him out for $700 million, and Perot blasted them for the amount of money they spent in view of the present condition of General Motors. And they did that so he'd keep his mouth shut because he was such a critic of General Motors, and he annoyed them so badly they just bought him out. What do you think of that?
Well, look at what Roger Smith said in Newsweek, December 1st. He said that raiders destroy equity, raiders destroy jobs. This should not be the case. Okay, now, what has Roger Smith done at General Motors? One, Roger Smith has closed 11 plants, cut out 30,000 jobs, lost market share, and has a profitability problem. And at the same time, Roger Smith, with 31,000 shares, having been there 35 years, made a salary of $4 million, including bonuses, only owns 31,000 shares, fired the only entrepreneur that General Motors has had, and I don't know when, and fired him, and he owns 12 million shares. Now, there's something that isn't quite right here. That just doesn't seem to be, and you've seen some of the things Ross Perot said. He said in Texas, when we find a snake, we kill a snake. At General Motors, he said they appoint a committee that hires a consultant to decide what to do with the snake. So, I mean, he's telling you the same things that Richard Darman's telling you, too. Hypocrisy is just absolutely killing us as far as being competitive in world trade. That's why we keep losing market share.
Do you think that if General Motors were subjected to a takeover raid, that it would help General Motors?
Well,
is that conceivable, first of all?
Well, you're talking about the largest corporation in the world.
I know. It is conceivable. I mean, you're from Texas. You're not going to rule that out, are you?
Well, being from Texas, things have changed in Texas. You know, we're not as big as we used to be.
Oil's going back up. We know that.
Well, it'll go back up, but we're some time away from.
Well, that aside, you're going to rule that out conceptually?
That
General Motors could be the object of a takeover?
I wouldn't rule it out totally, no.
All right. You're not telling us anything, are you? That's not a signal, is it?
No, it sure isn't. I don't know anything about building cars.
Let me ask you this. So therefore, you agree with Perot? on the state of the management of General Motors, and you can only see Perot as exerting a salutary, therapeutic influence, a corrective and remedial influence on that management, right?
Right. I'm with Ross Perot right down the middle, 100%.
Right down the middle, all the way?
That's right.
All right. What about in his dealings with regard to the hostages? Lieutenant Colonel North called him up 2 years ago. He says, I want you to put up $2 million in exchange for a hostage. Perot says, tell me what to do. It didn't come off because the fellow didn't appear in Cyprus to pick up the money. 2 years later, the same thing happened. Now, Ross Perot is a Republican. You're a Republican. He's rich, you're rich. He's got a daughter in the White House, you got a daughter in the White House. You have another correspondent? Suppose you got a call from Colonel North. Would you have put the $2 million up?
Now, that's a tough question to ask because I don't know what North told Perot. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances of that though. So I'm not going to answer whether I'd put the $2 million up or not because I don't know exactly what the situation was. So.
Suppose you knew what the situation was. Would you put it up? Are you agreeable? You agree with Perot on this, that you have to use unconventional methods at certain times to get things done like that?
Well, I'll agree with Perot on this point. You have to do unconventional things at times to get things done. I will agree with that much of the statement. But as far as getting hostages released, I'm not going to commit myself on that until I see the deal laid out. And
we'll be right back.
Okay.
You're the founder of Mesa and CEO there now. If Mesa were the target of a hostile takeover, what would you do?
We would consider it to be hostile first. I've said it, I wouldn't spend a dime for anybody to get a lawyer or delay any offer. The offer will go directly to the stockholders.
Let the best man win?
Exactly. There'll be no shark recovery.
No green mail?
No green mail.
No poison pill?
No poison pill. There won't even be a golden parachute. All I want them to do with me is to pay me until 5 o'clock on the last day.
Thanks for being my guest on One-on-One, Boone Pickens.
John McLaughlin's One-on-One has been sponsored in part by Leading Edge World Trade, networking the world. For a transcript, send $4 to Federal News Service, 620 National Press Building, Washington, D.C. 20045. Specify program date. Topics are selected by Mr. McLaughlin, and the opinions expressed are solely those of the participants.
I'm John McLaughlin. Next week, join the group early, special time, Saturday night at 7 p.m. That's Saturday night, 7 p.m.